our first guest speaker that we have on board for this morning. He is Director General of DG Move and the Chairman of the Administrative Board of the SESAR Joint Undertaking. I'd like to welcome on stage Enric Ololai. Enric, I hope you're with us. Don't know if we have a technical problem maybe with Enric.
Henrik is gone. Henrik is gone.
Okay.
He is not anymore in the list.
Okay. So maybe if Emon could step in, and then we will give the floor to Henrik when he's back. Emon, excellent. So you're ready to go?
Good morning, Florian. Can you hear me?
Yes, very well. Thanks a lot for joining. So I'd like, if you don't mind, to hand over to you, and then Enric hopefully will join afterwards.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so first of all, Florian, what I'd like to say is it's a pleasure to be part of the SESAR Innovation Days. As you know, Eurocontrol are a very committed participant and supporter of SESAR. So what I thought I'd do today is frame your week a little bit. So I'm going to share a presentation with you now, which is you'll see in a moment, okay? And what it basically does is it just looks at how the industry has evolved over the last few months of the pandemic. So you can see it on screen, Florian, yes? Okay.
Ja, die is eruit gegaan, hè?
Can you see? Florian? Yeah, okay. It's there. Okay, so perfect. So moving on, I just want to mention, Florian, that if you look at the last number of years from 2005, you can see that this year has turned out to be a really significant disaster this year. What's really interesting is that the total flights in our system has dropped from 11 million to 4.4. What's also worth looking at, though, is look at the share of the low cost, which in 2005 was 13%, and by 2019 had grown to 30%. And of course, this year still forms a very significant part. But what's also worth looking at is how we've performed intercontinentally. So the current situation right up to last week, to the 3rd of December, is that we have a 64% reduction in flights within Europe, but a 58% transatlantic. And if you look, for instance, here, you can see huge reductions in North America.
Now this one is okay, it seems to be.
So effectively, all that's happening at the moment is that we're looking at cargo operations, and we're looking at basic intercontinental operations, but with very little passengers. So just up to yesterday, Florian, you can see that yesterday, the 6th of December, was a 66% reduction. Now, interestingly, we're getting a situation where load factors have started to increase, and we're now looking at over 55% load factors, which is a big increase, and heading towards 70%, because the carriers have now cut the network so much that actually the airlines are doing very well with the load factors. So you mentioned that just the scenarios for the rest of the year. You'll be aware that we have published for RP3 a number of scenarios, and these were sent out 2 weeks ago. But I thought it might be more useful just to focus on the short term. We produced scenarios in September, which, you know, and in April, which were incredibly accurate. But you can see that in the last number of weeks, we're now below the scenarios. We're now currently at 65% reduction, whereas we had predicted that by the end of December, we will be at 54. The reality is that the second wave has been much more significant than we anticipated. So it's really a big challenge for everybody in Europe. But we are expecting over the next 3 to 4 weeks, a slight increase in capacity, particularly from the major airlines. It's also worth looking at how this has affected airports, and particularly regional airports. And a lot of your projects there are talking about things like remote towers, you know, all of these kind of activities. But we're looking at a situation where the economics of regional airports is becoming very much into question. We reckon there's about 200 airports that might face insolvency in the coming months. And these are generally small airports with limited movements. And this is where perhaps integrated technology can actually save this. This is maybe where there's a technology response that might be very, very useful. It's also worth looking at what we call cash burn. And this is a very important thing for the airline industry. And these are IATA figures. But you can see that the airlines don't predict a positive cash flow till Q4 of 2021. So that's really one more year, and that's really very significant. That shows you, for instance, here that you can see the cash burn in Q2, Q3, Q4. And, you know, when you look at this in the context of the system, you can see, for instance, that, you know, huge amount of bankruptcies. We've had very tricky situation with Norwegian, with Flybe. We've had bailouts for Lufthansa, bailouts for Alitalia, KLM, Air France, and then, of course, loans as well. And, of course, a lot of these bailouts for airports and for airlines, should I say, are in the form of debt. So we're looking at a really significant year, a year that we've not seen like for maybe, you know, the history of aviation. We've never seen something as catastrophic as this. I think Henrik will come on in a moment and we'll talk to you a lot about the ECDC EASA guidelines, but we very strongly welcome those. But it's important that travelers should not be treated as high risk for COVID. Interestingly, and I just make this point, I think Henrik might be logged on at this stage, but I heard on a radio station in the UK that some doctors were saying that ECDC and EASA were captured by the aviation industry. This is simply not true. But there is a very marked reticence for health authorities to coordinate and to let go of some of the power that they have had over the last number of months. And that's why this ECDC and EASA guideline, which was spearheaded by Henrik and Move, is really, really important. But it's really important that we have to sell it. It's one thing drafting it, and it's great to get the brand of ECDC on it, and I congratulate Move on this. What's more importantly is that we adopt it together with the traffic light system. So the whole vaccine issue, to me, is very important. But I think we need to be really clear about this, is that we won't see a big improvement until summer 2021. The rollout of the vaccine will take a number of months. You can see that it already, we have one approved, which is the Pfizer vaccine, and that's been rolled out in the UK as we speak, but it's going to take a while before it's rolled out in significant numbers in Europe. The doctors are telling us that you need a 70% take-up rate before they would be happy, which seems like a lot, but that seems to be the current thinking at the moment. But let's look at what we're happening. For the first half of 2021, the testing and tracing is going to be important. And traffic lights, to me, the traffic lights are very important. And also very important to look at what will develop in the marketplace. Now, it might not develop in Europe, but I see that Qantas, for instance, have already said that if you don't have a vaccine certificate, you don't fly intercontinentally on one of their flights. So you might see peer pressure from airlines forcing this for intercontinental operations. And I read this morning that South Korea are going to demand that international travelers would be vaccinated from the start of the year. So what this means to me is that in a financial crisis, do you stop aviation? And do you stop innovation? And for me, it's important that we realize that this is not the time to stop innovation. I think it's very important to remind the audience, and here I think sometimes when I hear conferences, we're suffering from a little bit of collective amnesia. Just 1 year ago, I was on calls asking people to increase capacity, talking about 1,100 flights a day that were diverted from German airspace to move away from the core of Europe, talking about significant delays in the south of France, looking at a really big meltdown for the European economy. Just 1 year ago, we were being summoned to the European Parliament to look at what we were doing about delays. And there was a huge amount of effort on how the European network would be improved. And this is what has brought about the SES2+. And it's important we realize the problem that we're trying to solve is a problem that will come back again very, very quickly when we start to see a pickup. And we will see a pickup. I'm very confident of that. I would say to you that the focus on innovation for me is very important. And I want to just mention, particular issues in terms that are useful. And it's very important, and Florian knows my view on this, is that we pick some large projects and actually see them through to implementation. So the whole basis of SES2 Plus is the single digital sky. It talks about ATSPs and artificial intelligence and all of these kind of things. To me, it's important that we look at it in the context of the network management. So if we look at the problems that we're trying to solve, and we should always in research, I think, ask ourselves, what is the problem we're trying to solve? Well, let's look at the expectations. 1 year ago, we were facing traffic growth, fragmented airspace, carbon neutral expectations, and a need to improve what we do. So has this changed? Let's look at what it is today. Today, we see a recovery by 2024, but yes, traffic will continue to grow. We saw only last week Ryanair announcing 210 new Boeing 737 MAXs. Fragmented airspace, nothing has changed. And I've urged the ANSPs to use this downtime to deal with the issue of capacity. The question of carbon neutral, we now, since we started, have the launch of the EU Green Deal, and Henrik was talking about this. And remember, the SES, we looked for it last year, and the package has been published. So it's important to mention that we need to focus research on areas that support aviation. And here, the whole area of CO2 emissions. And last week, EASA published a paper, or the week before, should I say, on the implication of NOx as well, and contrails as well. So there's a huge amount of issues that are facing aviation. And while I think it's important that pure research continues, I would like to argue at this stage for more focused research, research that's focused to meet a problem. And here, the sustainability is something that's really important. I very much welcome the initiatives by Airbus on hydrogen propulsion and also electrification by some. And we're hoping that something significant here will enter service by 2035. But the problem we have in research is we need to get from now to 2035. And what we're looking at basically is this whole aviation decarbonisation debate. You'll be aware that we produced a paper which was very popular in some circles and not popular in other circles, but it argues that simply taxing aviation does not actually reduce emissions. It doesn't alter consumer behavior. And this is counterintuitive, but we looked at it over a range of countries, over a range of years. And we also are looking to say, if you tax aviation, make sure that you use it for decarbonisation and R&D. Far too often, governments throughout Europe are just grabbing taxes from aviation and using it for the general exchequer. We're advocating that it should be used to support SAF and hydrogen. And here some of the developments by the Commission are to be very strongly welcomed. The whole initiative of MOVE to push SAF is really, really important. Because remember, the problem with SAF at the moment, it's 4 times more expensive than regular J1, and it's only less than 10% of the supply of the market available. So really, we have a huge gap. And if you look at last week, we saw a Lufthansa flight that went the whole way to Asia using nothing but SAF. So technically, it's impossible. We now just need to get a production problem and incentivization in place. So I just want to say a few words about SESAR 3. In Eurocontrol, we will support SESAR 3. We've signed the declaration of intent, and we will continue, and I will continue to support the resourcing of SESAR 3 and the SESAR 2020. It's really, really important. But remember, when we're looking at innovation, we need to look at the digital European sky and the innovation path. And to me, it's very important that we get the deployment correctly. And here, we've had a very good development with the network manager in signing a principles agreement with all the progressive ANSPs in Europe that look at basically taking research and deploying it very quickly in the network. So this is what this VGAP we're talking about. And I'm hoping that SESAR 3 will see a much tighter and a much faster path to deployment by the infrastructure manager as part of the network manager. So for us, there's 4 key things I think that we need to look at. Obviously, the traditional airlines, airports, and the network manager, and this is the partnership that I outlined to you there. but also a much closer link between innovation and ATM operations. And we will continue to work closely with the JU. So for me, just to wrap up, I want to say that the greener aviation, that scalable, resilient and efficient ATM, this is going to be a key theme. So if this is a key theme for the industry, and it's a key requirement for the industry, it needs to be quickly translated into a key requirement for research. So it's always important, in my view, when you're talking about research, is to understand the problem that you're trying to solve. And for us, it's the modernization and digitalization of European ATM. So Florian, I'm happy to pass back to you there. I'm sure at this stage that Henrik will be available and to get going there. So thank you very much. I'd just finally like to mention that I see as part of your program, you have the Michael O'Leary interview at 3 o'clock today. And I'm sure that many of the things that you should be focused on for research, you will get a very practical look at this as part of our Hard Talk series. So thank you very much, Florian, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Eamon, and thanks a lot for accepting as well that we have brought the Eurocontrol Hard Talk into our programs. That will definitely be, I think, a key highlight of today. Thanks for as well recalling the link between innovation, research, and the challenges that we are facing, in particular the sustainability one. I personally believe as well that even if we have extremely good results in terms of SESAR solutions and the research activities, they are nothing until they are actually implemented. And this is really, I think, the spirit of what we are trying to put in place and what you're trying to put in place, in particular in relation to deployment activity. So thanks, Eamon. I would like now to move to the chairman of the SESAR Joint Undertaking Board and the Director General of DG Move, Henrik. Henrik, I see you are with us. Sorry for the technical issue we had earlier on.
Thank you.
Step in.
Thank you very much, Florian. I hope that this time you can see and hear me. I mean, I was also excellent. I was also online before, but for some reason I was not allowed to join you. So these are the beauties of all this virtual world, which is not really to my liking, I have to be honest, even though that we are here talking about the innovation days. There are good and bad innovations, and I think that the best is to take the most sensible part of it and integrate it to the normal life, which we all want to get back very soon. I would also like to thank very much Eamon for all the kind words that he also said about our work here in the Commission, and me and my colleagues are extremely pleased and grateful for that. And of course, we would not be able to advance and also make progress if it wouldn't be such a great collaboration with you, Eamon, and your team and your leadership, which has been also crucial, but equally with our colleagues in EASA, with Patrick, with you, Florian. I think everybody has been really doing their utmost in trying to address the current challenges. But ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, let's get back to our real business. And it's a real pleasure and also honor for me to address you all for this 10th anniversary of the SESAR Innovation Days. And firstly, I'd like to say congratulations. It's great that this event has lasted now for a decade, gathering more participants and offering a platform for great discussions about innovation in aviation. With envy, I was also watching the great video, which simply reminded us of the gatherings that we have had over our last decade and how lively and also how motivating they have been. But, you know, all of you who know me are aware that I would have so much more preferred to be with you in person and to address a great crowd. But here we are in December. Perhaps as a symbol of the challenges of this year, 2020. I think we all would like to see this year to end, turn a new page, and hope sincerely and wholeheartedly that the next year will be better than this one. But there is always a silver lining, and we are richer from an experience no other generation has had in a century. Are we happy about that? Probably not, but we cannot change that. So let us build on that experience and act where we can do more, analyze what worked, what not, and focus on how we can change the world around us for being a better and more resilient place. We can do that together. The COVID pandemic has severely hit our societies and economies. Transport, together with travel and tourism, generally the hospitality industry, are the hardest hit sectors. Unfortunately, among them, aviation. The Commission has and will continue to take action to help these sectors. It's clear that we must speed up our efforts to restore transport services, make sure the recovery gets underway, and brings us more sustainable, smarter, competitive, and resilient sector that would be able to thrive as part of the exit from the crisis. We need to set out much needed reforms, policies, and actions to support the sector. There is an opportunity not to be wasted. The current health crisis we face has shown the importance of mobility and transport for the European citizens and businesses. Let us build on that, and let's build back better. When we look at the political context and societal expectation, it's evident that Europe has a clear climate ambition in the form of the European Green Deal, and all modes of transport need to play their part in it. Europe is championing this transition globally, and all sectors have to support this process. There needs to be a clear path and understandable roadmap in delivering the 90% reduction in transport-related greenhouse gas emissions by 2050 and help the EU become the first climate-neutral continent. In order to put this in the wider context and frame the development and pathways for the next decades, Commissioner Vălean will present on Wednesday, so already day after tomorrow, the strategy for sustainable and smart mobility, which is setting the scene for the next decade and beyond. This strategy will set out an ambitious framework with appropriate milestones for the sector to master the twin green and digital transitions and build a resilient transport system for generations to come. Sustainability of the mobility and transport sector will be a driving force. Greening mobility must be the new license for the transport sector to grow. To achieve this sustainable transition, we need to make all transport modes more sustainable, make sustainable alternatives widely available, and put in place the right incentives. We also need to offer a seamless multimodal experience to support sustainable choices by taking advantage of digitalization and automation. Innovation will shape the mobility of the future, and we need to make sure the right framework and enablers for this transition to smart mobility are in place. The success of this strategy would very much depend on a solid and well-functioning single market, where competition is the norm and bottlenecks, missing links, and unsubstantiated barriers are removed. We need seamless single market for building the sustainable, resilient, and smart transport system. Otherwise, we never get to achieve our goals. In aviation sector, this means preserving and deepening the single European aviation area that continues to provide connectivity in affordable prices in a competitive environment, but also, and particularly perhaps, the single European sky. The latter is the project that we have to deliver now if we are serious in our commitments to sustainability and digitalization. Excuses are not acceptable. We need to move forward. Here, the SESAR project, the technological pillar of the single European sky, remains essential to modernize the air traffic management across Europe. The ATM community provided a strong support to secure the extension of a coordinated ATM research in Europe, building on a renewed public-private partnership. We are in the last miles to adopt a legal instrument establishing the new generation of those joint undertakings funded under Horizon Europe. the research and innovation program of the EU. Innovation is essential to make sure that the air traffic management will become more flexible, scalable, and more resilient, while becoming at the same time significantly more sustainable. Our aim is an ambitious SESAR-free joint undertaking, allowing full implementation of a digital European sky, supporting the SESAR vision defined in the 2020 edition of the ATM Master Plan. I encourage all of you to come with new ideas and fresh thinking. Innovation in aviation is now needed more than ever in order to respond to the crisis and to allow the increasing number of new air vehicles, such as drones, to be safely and successfully deployed in the skies of Europe. The crisis has shown us the importance to build into our system more resilience and ability to better anticipate the future challenges. This makes me to underline the pivotal importance of long-term innovative research that enables the digitalization of ATM and the development of a safe, competitive and sustainable future for the European aviation system. Such novel research can prompt disruptive change and bring long-term valuable returns to people and businesses in Europe and beyond. This is fully in line with the ambition outlined in Flight Path 2050 and the strategic research and innovation agenda of ACARE. Europe's long-term plan to decarbonize aviation includes many new technological innovations, such as hydrogen planes, electric air vehicles, scaled up use of sustainable aviation fuels that Eamon was also talking about, just to mention a few. They all play an important role, but in particular, I would like to underline the work that we are doing on the sustainable aviation fuels, trying to make this a viable alternative, because it has a huge potential which is currently not yet tapped in. There also innovation, research play an important role, but we need to build the scale. We need to also make sure that it would be available in the market with affordable prices. In the same context, the work of SESAR-2 and the deployment of developed solutions plays very important role in decarbonizing aviation. In support to these new developments in the ATM sector, the SESAR joint undertaking conducted the airspace architecture study last year and proposed an evolution of the European airspace, highlighting how increased automation and virtualization can effectively enable a collaborative approach in order to ensure high levels of effectiveness and resilience. When talking about digitalization, we need also to talk about data, which is an essential issue to all aviation stakeholders. The airspace architecture study defined the concept of data service providers as an alternative solution to unbundling of services related to ATC provision. This includes all sources of data, as we know that data will play a key role in all future systems. Data sharing would be one of the success factors of ongoing SES2+ reform. The most essential element for the creation of data service providers is the sharing of all relevant data in a secure and trusted way. I am convinced that creative digital solutions will help to achieve this across the aviation value network, fully in line with the European digital strategy and cybersecurity standards. All this being said, I cannot ever stress enough the main narrative in aviation, that safety always comes first. If we manage to accelerate the deployment of new technologies, we need to make sure that there will be a proper change management to make sure that all safety aspects are well taken care of. No doubt, it is very important to have all the ATM stakeholders on board for this. Ladies and gentlemen, I am very pleased that despite of the challenges this year, the SESAR Innovation Days are offering again a platform and agenda, rich in substance, and on top even a virtual exhibition that displays projects promoting automated solutions to digitalize aviation. I'm equally thrilled that today we have participants across the globe. This is for me extremely important and shows the value of the SESAR collaborative model, which seeks to break down silos of knowledge within and outside Europe. I'm also delighted that the SESAR JU is teaming up with ICAO and ATCA to organize co-branded discussions. I have always considered this a global project and have always very proudly promoted it around the world to many partners at numerous events. These are European solutions, but they are in fact interoperable cross-border solutions that add value anywhere in the world to the global aviation system, and we would like our good partners to benefit from them. So just to say to all our global friends here today, you are very welcome, and I'm delighted to have you with us. Dear friends, through those yearly SESAR Innovation Days, we are nurturing the aviation talent of tomorrow and developing new ideas to enable smart and sustainable mobility and connectivity through air travel in Europe. The exceptional conditions of the COVID-19 pandemic will not allow us to meet and benefit from the usual networking event, but I trust the SESAR JU team under the direction of my good friend and excellent colleague Florian Guillermet will make the best use of the digital and innovative IT solutions to make this event as a success as it is every year. I wish you all thought-provoking SESAR Innovation Days, and thank you very much for the kind invitation to talk to you. Enjoy the day. Thank you very much.
Thanks to you, Henrik. Thanks for taking the time to be with us this morning. We heard you loud and clear on the role of innovation, and thanks as well for reminding us that the seeds, that SESAR, that aviation is as well about talents and international cooperation. I'm really happy that we are able to build on these themes as well through this particular event. Thanks for your constant support on SESAR 3 as well, in making sure that we can continue this endeavor, this effort in the context of the next financial perspective. I would say we all look forward as well to hearing more about the strategy this week. It's a very important week for you, I know, and that's even more important that you've taken this time to be with us today. So thanks for that. Thanks to you and Eamon for your continuous support. I think events like SEEDS and SESAR in general will not be possible without the effort, the energy that you're putting in it personally, but as well through your teams that are obviously contributing a lot to the setup of this organization and of this particular type of event. So thanks to both. I wish you a very good week, and well, we'll stay in touch, and we'll of course come back to you with some findings of this particular event this year, and hopefully next year we will be face to face and be able to share a bit more human to human, I would say, interaction in such a context. Thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Florian. Cheers.
Thank you. Cheers. So